You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Not just a movie quote, but also a suggestion that some are often forced to go back on their values over time due to power, challenges, or strategic compromises. Now, I don't know about you, but that is McLaren in the second half of 2025 all over. For many F1 fans, Norris and Piastri have revealed a savage truth about how a close title fight unfolds between teammates in the final rounds of the season. And that is whichever way you cut it, no matter how fair and equal McLaren try to be, two don't go into one. A team at this level with these sort of stakes cannot give two drivers equal treatment. And sooner or later, the time will come where they will have to admit that they gave one driver more support over the other. Now, this sort of situation currently between Norris and Piastri is something that we haven't really seen recently in Formula One and might have fallen out of muscle memory for some fans. As of course, it's been nearly 10 years since two teammates went head-to-head for the driver's title. Now, just to refresh the memory and some examples here, we saw the back and forth between Hamilton and Rosberg between 2014 and 2016, and prior to that we saw Vettel and Webber both fighting for the title in 2010. And then just before in 2009 we saw Barrichello in the running against his teammate Jenson Button. We also saw Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve at Williams in 1996. But the two most famous examples of this are at McLaren, where of course we saw Hamilton and Alonso going at it for the 2007 World Championship, where they made a balls of it and got leapfrogged by Kimi. And then the biggest of all, the definition of teammate rivalries, Senna and Prost through 88 and 89. And interestingly, in all of those scenarios, each time the team claimed that they were giving neither driver preferential treatment. There was no favoritism, they were giving each driver a fair shot and letting them race, resulting in literally every single one of those scenarios from a team dynamic perspective ending badly. So this latest turn of events, as we head to the end of the 2025 season, is going to cause some discomfort in the McLaren camp, and especially across the fan bases of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, because since 2003, when McLaren was starting to become a force again, they've been able to build up this reputation of equality amongst its drivers, establishing that they are all racers and that there will be no favoritism here whatsoever. Unlike the dark and evil forces of Red Bull and Max Verstappen, where all will be ruled by one and one will be ruled by all. And that's just from a McLaren perspective, obviously. The last few years has been very much they're the bad guys because they use team orders and favour one driver, whereas us at McLaren, we're the good guys because we let our drivers race and compete, no matter how much damage that's going to cause potentially long term. And this worked out quite well for McLaren because they could position themselves as the exact opposite of what was happening over at Red Bull. Both Lando and Oscar could race each other till their heart's content, and Zak Brown at the end of the day could claim his moral high ground. Because really, what was up for grabs at the end of the day in 2023 and 2024? A podium perhaps, maybe the odd race win, and just maybe collecting a higher haul of points if you were lucky. Fast forward to the end of the 2025 season, and McLaren find themselves in a position where Lando and Oscar are locked in a battle for the driver's title, and perhaps a harsh reminder that they can't keep claiming this equal driver treatment spiel for much longer. Now, because in 2025 they don't have Red Bull and Max to act as the anti-hero in their eyes, McLaren now find themselves centre stage with the spotlight on them and all the audience listening, because one way or another they are going to have to confess to the world that one driver was getting preferential treatment over the other, even if it is by just a couple of percent. Now, normally this wouldn't be such a big deal, but because they've been riding this wave of papaya rules and we're all racers here and everything for so long, they are simply prolonging the inevitable, where one driver is going to walk away as world champion and the other driver is going to walk away feeling probably a bit betrayed and a bit hard done by. And you know what as well? Probably having lost all faith in the team too. And so, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the harsh reminder is that whichever way you cut it, there is always going to be a number one and a number two driver. Even if you burrow down into the microscopic teeny-weeny details, that will always be the case. Now, McLaren can deny this all they want, but the visuals for most of the season were actually that they had one driver who they wanted and were positioning to be world champion, and then they had another driver who happened to be leading the Drivers' Championship. Now, I'll leave you guys to decide which one is going to be which there, but this nice little thing of equality and fairness that McLaren have burrowed out for themselves over the last few years is going to grind to a sudden halt by the time this season ends. Because it just feels that this attempt from McLaren in 2025 to conduct the most child-friendly, fluffy and lovely title battle of all time will be exposed as nonsense and thankfully a thing of the past. Now, I wonder if you guys are thinking the same as me, whereas if McLaren had actually committed to a proper 1 and 2 driver system, the driver's title probably would have been wrapped up weeks ago and, we wouldn't be having this problem right now. But instead, let's be honest, McLaren have been fanning around, making an absolute meal of the World Championship, making it much harder than it should have been, and also allowing Max Verstappen to close the gap in machinery that has really no business being where it is. But also flipping it around, in fairness to McLaren, by having this style that they have, they've managed to mop up the Constructors' Championship in pretty quick order. There hasn't really been any threat there whatsoever. But the thing is, as much as teams claim to love the Constructors' Championship and all the benefits it gives them, it's not what the fans pay to see. They don't come in through the door to see who's going to win the Constructors' Championship. They cough up their hard-earned cash to see who's going to win the Drivers' World Championship. That is what they pay to see. And also historically, it's a head-to-head, proper, down-to-the-wire drivers' title fight is what puts bums in seats. So although mathematically one of them is going to win the drivers' title, and not only have they made it much harder than it should have been, they've also proved that their methodology of equal treatment and no team orders only works when you're not fighting for the title. Now, back in 2023 and 2024, that methodology worked absolutely fine because you had the World Championship winning machine of Red Bull and Max Verstappen just mopping up everything. And the reason was that there wasn't much at stake. But fast forward to now, and it's a whole different story. Because let's just say, for argument's sake, McLaren simply can't wheel out the same old story of we gave both our drivers equal treatment, and at the end of the day, the best man won. And this is because, firstly, no one will buy it. I doubt anyone will truly believe that. And secondly, certain sponsors and partners at the team would prefer to see one driver win over the other. And I'll give you an example. Pure Electric, a sponsor of McLaren and also the business of Lando's daddy, I don't think that they're there to see Oscar Piastri win the driver's title. And thirdly, the cat is simply out of the bag now. McLaren, by that stage, will be an all-round World Championship winning team, and if they're going to continue this kind of level of dominance into the near future, then they're going to have to kind of grow up, mature, and start acting like one, and perhaps establish this driver number 1 and number 2 order. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. Even if it means adopting a Red Bull or Mercedes number 1 and 2 driver style that they criticised for such a long time. And it might also mean that McLaren have to get tough, very tough, and act for the greater good of the team, and not just to satisfy the ego of one of the drivers. I mean, just take a look at some of these well-oiled championship-winning operations that had a number 1 and a number 2 driver. Each driver knew their place, knew their job, and their position in the team, and it just works. And I just feel that McLaren might have to consider this option if they wish to establish this new era of McLaren dominance. So ultimately, no championship winning team has been able to maintain this level of perceived driver equality and ride off happily into the sunset. And with both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, I just sense that McLaren are going to find this out the hard way. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and switch on notifications too as well. See you later. Cheers.